Good evening, everyone. As you may or may not know, I'm David Place. I'm an associate professor here in the Digital Media Design Department, and I'm joined by the rest of our faculty here. Tonight, we're having a special guest speaker, Adam Abramowicz from the Army Painter. Adam is the tactical marketing executive for the Army Painter, and he is also a professional painter, video producer, social media whiz, and he's here to speak with us a little bit about what he does for a living and share some professional insights and some very important information about storytelling, about communication in teams, and about how to get your careers started and hopefully get some motivation and some insight. So I'm going to turn it over to Adam and let him take it from here.
Cool. Well, thank you very much, David. And this is really cool for me because if you would have talked to any of my high school teachers about me presenting to other students, they probably would have laughed at the idea. But look at me now. Still an idiot, but I'm an idiot who helped build a global brand through storytelling, community, and a little bit of chaos. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So I think one of the things that's hard, we're all creatives. That's why you're going through this as your educational pursuit. You want to create things, whether that's digital marketing, videos, graphic design. I'm not sure what the full curriculum entails, but I did see quite a bit of that. And I think it's now more important than ever for students like you to understand how to get into the workplace. And I can tell you that it doesn't come with a roadmap. There's a lot of wrong turns. There's a lot of reroutes to find your way. I'm living proof because I started as a DJ. I illustrated things. I worked in TV, films, then sporting goods industry, and now I sell paints that you put on tiny soldiers. But it's really fun because it's given us the opportunity to work with some great IP like Dungeons and Dragons, Star Wars, Lucasfilms, Disney, et cetera, et cetera. I think the reason why David asked me to be here is because I have a bit of a knack for turning creative impulse into impact. And I'd like to talk to you a bit about how storytelling can move more than just product or ticket sales. It can move people. That's the important part. The funny thing is, like, when David asked me to be in this meeting, I was like, that is a very, very bad idea to put me in a group of impressionable, creative minds. And an even worse idea is when the company asked me to present our brand strategy at a board meeting last month or 2 months ago. So I'm gonna open with how I opened that board meeting. The first slide said very simply, "We give a shit." And that's important. We'll come back to that a bit later. And I hope during the conversation of this that you'll understand that giving a crap, that caring, it's a very important separator in the work that you do, whether it's creative, whether it's in the business world, because the people that care, they actually tend to rise to the top. So as David said, my title is well, it's changed. It's Tactical Marketing Executive, and the team now calls me the Brand Commander, which is a bit of fun. We're the Army Painter. We paint tiny toy armies. And when you get to work in the creative space like I do, you get to make weird titles like that make sense to nobody. So for all anybody knows, I run the company. If you talk to my CEO, he says that I do. But that's not the truth. So I lead storytelling, campaigns, and build the content at the Army Painter. We're a Danish-born company. We make paints and tools for miniature painting, as I said. But the reality is what we make is paint, but what we sell is possibility. You heard the term selling the dream, but that's true. We sell on emotion. Every bottle that we paint that we make is a story waiting for somebody to tell with their miniatures. So my job connects creativity with commerce, creates creativity and commerce with community in ways that feel human and not corporate. And it's authentic to who we are. As I told David, my two schools of learning come from a book called Get in the Van by Henry Rollins. Urge you to go read it. And another book called Let My People Go Surfing from the founder of Patagonia. Highly recommend because the great instincts for how to shape things from a bootstrap grassroots style all the way up and carry it through to one of the biggest and most important brands in the modern world. So the question that I ask and want to ask you guys in a world that's full of constant media consumables, you are all raised in the age where you guys have everything on your phone. You're constantly been forced media. Sometimes it's an advertisement, sometimes it's not. Sometimes you don't even know it's an advertisement until it's too late. So in a world where we're constantly being beaten over the head with media, what's going to make your media stand out? When you're creating a graphic design piece, when you're making a short film or a commercial spot, what's different about it? It's rhetorical at this point, and we'll come back to that later. And I just want to say, anybody who wants to chime in, please do. I was asked a while ago in an interview about how if I had any advice for people to get into their line of work, field of work, what advice would that be? And you have to be able to sell yourself. You have to be able to show to people that you are an attribute in some way. And you can't always wait for your perfect job to happen. I haven't. This perfect job that I have now, it sort of fell into my lap, but it's because I kept putting myself out there. I was actually working for our biggest competitor, and I met the founder at a show, and we got on really great. And when things didn't go great with that company, I gave a call to this guy, and he said, "Yeah, I want to work with you." And now the new owners of the old company, I got to meet them at a trade show last year or earlier this year, and they're like, "Oh, you're the Adam. You're the guy that got away," and that's a really good feeling. So make yourself be the one that got away. When I say that, you can't wait for your perfect job. Sometimes you have to build your own internship. Build anything. I told David, when I was in school, I loved my curriculum. I graduated from Ohio University, and we had a really great video production program, a really great film program, an amazing journalism school, and also a great theater department. But up until our graduating class, none of them worked together. We'll talk about collaboration in a little bit too, and you'll see why that matters. So we formed a company called Party.com, Party, because we were the TCOM building. Now we're the School of Journalism or something. I don't remember what they call it. So college kids, Party.com. We won MTVU. That was a thing back in the day. We won a film competition. We submitted a 48-hour film that we just challenged ourselves to do. It won the competition. We got to go pitch a movie at Paramount Studios in front of Joel Schumacher, the Randall Winston, who was the executive producer of Scrubs, and the woman who created Sex and the City. I can't recall her name. We did that on our own. That was extracurricular. It's a lot easier that we can do things directly from our computer and our cell phones. And this cell phone shoots better footage than the Red camera when that came out my senior year of college, which is just insane to me. But you do have to get out there and you have to do things. And it's important for me that you guys know that every job does have, every passion has a professional angle. I've been fortunate that I've been able to find that in my life. Your career and your job is where, things start to intersect with your passion and your profession and what you're good at. Creative isn't just a thing that we call ourselves. It's not just a thing that we do. It means that you're adaptive. I can be doing this at a rug company and do well with it if I do it the right way. You could be making movies for Paramount Studios, and if you're doing it the right way, it could work. Or you could apply that to the pharmaceutical industry. It doesn't really matter. The most important thing is that you have to be able to see the connections that others miss, and we are, as creative people, uniquely predisposed to that. Tiffany, you had a question?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Sorry. Yeah, you said, how did you, because I have a project I'm working on myself, but you said that, how did y'all present it? If it was something you did like extracurricular and you did it with a team, how did y'all present that or get it to Paramount when like that extracurricular project you were talking about?
So we had at the school, a group of students started something called, I can't remember, I think it was just called the 48-hour film competition. And we did it every year, and it was wild and crazy. You drew a theme out of a hat. You drew a line of dialogue that you had to include, a prop that you had to include, and there was something else. So these were off the wall and crazy. And we had done one. We heard about this MTV film competition, so we just submitted it. They didn't know that we had made it in 48 hours. And if you watched it today, you probably wouldn't know that it was made in 48 hours. It was really good. And the people that I worked with, believe it or not, have gone on to do some pretty amazing things. Producers of Rogue One and now high up at Lucasfilms, creator and executive producer of some Marvel series on Hulu called MODOK. They're all over the place now. They're still doing it. I just took a different path on the corporate side, which is growing. So that kind of goes back, Tiffany, to what I was saying. Like sometimes you just have to put yourself out there,
Okay.
which isn't always easy for creative people to do because we take what we do very personally, but you have
Yes.
to. You have to. And I come from an art background as a kid too, and there is such a thing as adding too many brushstrokes to something, right? And leaving well enough alone. You can't let perfection be the enemy of good. That's something that I learned a long time ago.
That's my problem.
And there's a great documentary. It's called Overcoming. It's about a professional cycling team, and there's a Danish guy on there. I actually helped set up the sponsorship for this team after this movie came out. His name is Bjorn Ries. And he says in there in Danish, if you screw a screw 10 times too tight, when do you learn when to stop? Right? Eventually, you have to learn when to just leave it alone, whether that's that final cut in the final scene of the movie that you're working on, or whether it's that last gradient on a piece of graphic work. Like sometimes you do just have to set it aside. So I think the takeaway from that though is, I didn't plan to end up working in the hobby paint world. I love it. I mean, I was painting yesterday. Like it's a lot of fun. I love doing it. I did it when I was a kid. But it's not just because of that. I think it definitely helped. It definitely lights me up a bit, but it's learning how to translate that passion that I have and the passion that the community has into strategy and into connection. And I think, Tiffany, this kind of speaks to what you were saying. I did write a couple like one-liners in here just to kind of keep me on track a bit. From my perspective, the world doesn't need any more artists that play it safe and keep their stuff, to themselves, right? That's not the purpose of it. It needs artists and storytellers and creatives that are brave enough to be just a little bit weird, but you have to also be strategic enough to get paid, because just being weird doesn't get you paid. Not all of us can just do weird stuff and people like it. We'll come back to the weird bit in a little bit. So I want to talk about a bit about storytelling, and my goal here is to illustrate that, when I went to school, I wanted to make movies. I wanted to write stories. I thought I would be the next big sci-fi director in the world. And somewhere along the way, I found better opportunities or different opportunities or things that I liked more. And that's okay. Just because you're saying, oh, I want to be a director today, you might find an opportunity along the way. But storytelling happens in so many other different facets of life, and it's not just the big screen and books. And storytelling is one of the things that separates us from other species on this planet. We pass things down. There's a great story about grandmothers. I'm going to go a little bit off script here. I have 2 daughters. I have a wife. Women are 51% of the population of this world, right? The majority of this place. And we are one of 3 species that ages to have menopause. Presently living as a partner through that right now, and it's fun. But why do you think that is? Right? Every other species, when the male or the female can no longer reproduce, they die off. They're not good. Why are we and whales and elephants? Why did we evolve to have menopause and grandmothers? Storytelling is more important than anybody thinks. And branding, in essence, what I do is storytelling. And from my perspective, the type of storytelling that I do is empathy with structure. And empathy isn't just, oh, I feel you, I hear you. It's I'm listening to what you're wanting or saying. I'm following the trends as well. I don't have a marketing degree. I didn't even take a single business course in school. I learned how to write a business case thanks to Google. But the real business people in the world know that heartbeats build loyalty and successful, sustainable businesses. Okay. Now, you are growing up like I grew up in the world of multimedia, 21 years ago, 20 years ago when I was in college. I don't want to date myself too much. The rise of social media was just taking place. I think I was one of the first 800 people on Facebook. I'm not shitting you with that until I got kicked off Facebook, and I'll tell you about that story if we have more time at the end of the day. But as we are once again evolving to become a more digitally and artificial intelligence driven world, where we're getting more information that is generated from algorithms and code, I think humans are going to want more realness. They're going to want more real authenticity. So anybody, and I see my competitors doing it right now, they're leaning into AI and I can feel it from a mile away, right? And there is something there that doesn't click. You guys familiar with the concept of the uncanny valley? Why don't you chime in? Teach.
I think that's where Comic Sans exists, right? Where it's not quite human and
not quite human. Yeah, they say it's a genetic response that we evolved to have to see things that we saw and we're like, it looks kind of human, but not quite. So I should probably stay away and not try and make love to it, for lack of a better term, right? But they also say that that's how we might feel when we see alien life forms one day, right? I have the same sense with AI. AI is a tool to use. It's not a tool to create. So that's something that you're going to have to live with, because AI doesn't feel something. We feel something. And authenticity is really important. And that's the most important part of storytelling, is allowing the person that's seeing your art, hearing your art, viewing it, that they make a connection to it. So I think that authenticity, from my perspective, is, when utilized correctly, is the most unfair advantage any business can have. Waving bye to my daughter, who's on her way to see a live rendition of Shrek with her aunt. So if my one-liner there is, you can't automate soul, because AI can write, but it can't feel. Remember that. You guys feel something right now. You're probably really annoyed by listening to me talk. That's a feeling. AI doesn't feel that. Michael, you said, what were some early challenges you faced and how did you overcome them? Very good question. I'll be very frank. I went to Los Angeles with all of my friends a couple months after I graduated from Ohio University. The entertainment industry doesn't pay anything. I think I got paid $400 a week as a casting producer for a TV show called Intervention at the time. It was one of the biggest shows on reality TV at the time. And my rent was $1,600. So I went into debt trying to make it work in Los Angeles. So that was the hardest part. For me, it was, I'm somebody who likes to work. So I took a lot of different jobs. I worked in a bike shop. I started doing some commercials for them. I worked for Mark Saltzman, he was famously the head writer of Sesame Street. And I don't regret that, because it put me in a position where I had to force myself to put myself out there and be in a lot of places and in front of a lot of people. And it also made me realize that I didn't want to be in Hollywood. I don't want to sway anybody from not going there ever, but go there knowing that a lot of people go to Hollywood wanting to find themselves. And what they end up doing is they become something else entirely. So always remember who you are. Remember what I said about authenticity? So authenticity helped me kind of get out of there and look for what I really wanted. And I met a guy, his name was Greg Stern. And I don't know if you remember the old Nike Live Strong commercials, some of the professors here. He did those commercials. And I didn't think that you could have a successful career making commercials like that. But I saw his house and I know what cars he drove. And I knew that he was able to retire at the age of 44 and move his wife, who was sick, to a beautiful house in New Mexico because the air was better there. And to me, that seemed like an option. And I pursued it. I ended up making commercials for a company called Specialized Bicycles. I produced 2 commercials that aired during the Tour de France. So it was very weird because, I went to Los Angeles with an intent to do one thing. I pivoted at an opportunity that I had. And before, granted, John and Jordan, guys that I went to school with who have gone on to do some amazing big things in the entertainment industry, I had international commercials running 2 years out of college. So that was pretty cool. So again, don't be afraid to put yourself out there. That's the only way that happens. Social media has changed the way that we tell visual stories. David, I want to come back to that one if it's okay, because I have a bit in here where I think that this segues a bit nicely. Because I want to talk about being authentic, and I want to talk about the ego thing too, because that's important to me. And I think it's important to what you guys want to do if you decide you want to continue down this path. So this is kind of a lesson from the field, as I titled it, and I think, Tiffany, this also speaks to what you were saying. Constraint is a creative multiplier. I have kids, and the one thing that I know is that creative people are like kids. Now that I'm a leader and I have staff that I work with, they're like children in the way that they thrive off of structure, driven by chaos, but thrive in structure. When my kids start their bedtime routine at 6:30 every night, and I'm a mean dad, 6:30 every night, they are better people. When they haven't, I wouldn't wish my worst enemy sit with them. I'm exaggerating, but structure is very good. Structure confines us. Structure gives us direction. So don't be afraid of structure. Structure is when you find out what else you can do. And structure requires collaboration. And that's what I wanted to get to. One of the things and one of the reasons why I think my graduating class has succeeded in the ways that they have is because we weren't afraid to collaborate. We weren't afraid to sit and say, Jordan, you are a better director of actors. You should probably direct this piece. Even though I wrote it and I have the vision for it, I think you should direct this. I'll art direct this time because I can do that. Devin was a great DP. Amanda, she was the best line producer you could ever have. We leaned into what we were good at. We didn't all go into it hoping to be, the next big thing. We leaned on each other, and you need to lean on your classmates and your professors. They have experience. I still talk to, my oldest daughter that I just said bye to 3 days after she was born. One of my college professors and advisors drove down from Ohio University. I was living in South Carolina to visit and brought her gifts. A couple years ago, I got called from another professor. He asked me to go do some pickup shots for a documentary he was working on. Stay close with your professors. They're good ones too. But I think that society, especially in the creative world, reinforces that we need to do it on our own. And I think that that's the wrong outlook. We're taught that you have to think better, you have to be better, and that all drives ego. And I have a big problem with ego. The reason why my company is successful is because egos are checked at the door. If you have a good idea, you bring it to the table. If you think something's a bad idea, you speak up right now. But you never, ever say, I told you so. Because everybody knows the egos are set aside. Egos demand control, and control, in my opinion, is the enemy of collaboration. Now, yes, there's times where somebody needs to take control of certain things, but that's delegation. You need to collaborate. You need to lean into what your strengths are. You need to reinforce what your weaknesses are. And it really helps when you could fill those gaps when you're trying to create something, when you find somebody who can do it for you. My opinion, and I'm oftentimes the loudest person in the room, but rarely does the best idea come from the loudest person in the room. For the film nerds that are here, I don't know what the demographic is. If you think that you're the next Wes Anderson, I'm stoked for you. I'm happy for you. But I promise you, Wes Anderson didn't get there without talented DPs, gaffers, studio heads, of course, the actors to turn his weird visions into something that are meaningful, multi-generational. Those movies will hold up until the end of time. Ego is afraid of failure, okay? Ego tells you that you can't fail. And I need you to erase that from your heads, because failure is free tuition if you're paying attention. Okay? I have failed more than most people. I've put my foot in the mouth more than most people. And this brings me back to what David was saying, asking about social media. In a roundabout way, this makes sense. When Specialized first hired me, they hired me to work on video because they saw the potential. But also, that's when MySpace, Facebook, Twitter were popping up. And all of these companies were saying, we need to develop our own social media platform. I think Wells Fargo had tried to make their own social media page. That's how tone deaf everybody was. I took the job knowing that I was not going to develop a social media platform for them. I was 23 years old. That to me was the dumbest idea ever. And I went in there trying to tell them, you need to learn how to use these, and I'm going to make videos to help you tell that story. Because Vimeo had just started. YouTube was developing into something new. Facebook at that point didn't even allow videos yet, but I knew that they would. And that's where people were dwelling. When you can get into those spaces where people are dwelling, that's when you can get their attention. If you're different, go back up to the beginning. If you do something that matters. My first day on the job at Specialized Bicycles, I was called into a boardroom, and it was global marketing and a bunch of people. And I got to preface this. The first world champion of mountain biking, period, was a guy named Ned Overend. I think it was 1993 or 94. I had a Wheaties poster of Ned on my room when I was a kid. He had a mole and a big mustache. So I get invited into this meeting, and they're talking about ways that they can market and video and technology that they can introduce to bike stores. And this gentleman, who was a bit older, no mole, no mustache, he says, I think that we should put CD-ROMs on hang tags to hang from every bicycle at every Specialized bicycle dealer in the world. So they talked about it around the room, and then the head of global marketing, Ben, looked at me and he says, Adam, you're the new guy, you're young. What do you think about that? And I said, I think that is a terrible idea. Number one, the iPhone was just coming around. You know, we all have this in our pocket, and pretty soon we're going to be able to look at whatever we want. There's rumor that they're going to be able to scan codes and get video and content to pop up, which ended up being QR codes. And I said, but despite the fact, where are they going to play that DVD? In the store? You don't want them walking out of the store. You want them to buy in that store, right? You know, and what happens if they take the CD with them? You have to restock the CDs. How many CDs are we going to make? That just seems like a logical nightmare, right? So I shat all over this guy's great idea. And as I walked out of that meeting, a guy named Chris Matthews came, put his arm around me. He says, good job. You just told Ned Overend to fuck off. And I almost peed my pants. And I went to the lunchroom after that meeting and I apologized, sir. I had a poster of you on my wall. But that's where social media was only 20 years ago. And every quarter, I would say today, it changes. I need an e-com planner to tell me what the trends are and provide me data. I'm a math idiot. I hate math. I like data. I don't like math. So I know what's working, when it's working, when are heartbeats clicking off. When I make a video, when are people going to say, I'm really into this. When do I hook? When does that call to action need to be there? That data guides the storytelling. There's multiple ways to tell the same story, but it's when and how you do it that matters the most. And I think that's why, you have to lean on other people. I think a lot of creative people, we do this for the individual pursuit because we can sit down in our chairs and do our thing. And that's cool too. But you have to have people that you could feedback with. You have to show your work sometimes. I don't think that I would have the career that I do if social media didn't exist, to answer your question, David. I would probably be teaching, and there's nothing wrong with that. I love teaching. I teach people how to paint all the time. I might be doing like news reporting or something like that, which I would hate. But because of social media and because I came up at the time that I did, I was very fortunate. So timing is a bit of everything. But had I not put myself in a position to take advantage of the timing, I wouldn't be here talking to you right now. You'd just think, well, you probably still think I'm a washed up bum, but I'd just be a washed up bum. So, my key takeaways for you guys that I would love for you to take away is don't hesitate to reach out and ask for help, whether that's your professors, whether that's your fellow classmates, whether that's family or friends. Make them the subjects of your movie. Make them your target demographic. Challenge yourself to make something that appeals to somebody that you know nothing about. That's where empathy comes in, right? You have to learn who is watching this, who's going to consume this, what am I going to make them feel? I didn't invent this concept. It's somebody else. I don't know his name. I saw it on a TED Talk, but I preach this to this day at my company. And I think that it is a big separator, and it's a big separator in the way we tell stories. The way companies do it wrong in marketing is they try and sell to your brain, right? Because they think that the brain's going to make that decision. And it does ultimately make that decision. But if it's only the brain that you're talking to, the brain can talk itself out of making that decision. Now, if you speak to somebody's heart and you get the emotional buy-in, then they're already hooked. Then they consult the brain. The brain says, maybe I shouldn't. Or it says, maybe we really should because this thing's beating really fast, right? So once you get the heart aligned with it, once you get the emotional tie to something, and now I'm talking purely from a sales point of view, but it's storytelling. When somebody has an emotional reaction to something, they're much more drawn to it. So it's about making people feel things. This is where I get to the ask me anything part before I wrap it up with some very profound closing remarks. So I think we'll just open it up. Don't be shy.
I have a question. One, just what is your connection with TSTC, or is there one, or did you go here, or I didn't hear that part because
I think David picked my name out of a hat. David, do you want to share?
Sure. Yeah, and it actually has a lot to do with, I guess, some shared interests that Adam and I have, but also the impression I got from his video work and the amount of educational outreach that he's doing with his company. So I was a closeted Dungeons and Dragons player from a young age, and my son recently got into Dungeons and Dragons, which gave me an excuse to start playing it with him and to get back into miniature collecting and miniature painting. I'm in no way a professional painter at all, but obviously with what I do with a living, I'm very interested in doing it correctly, right? So as I was researching new painting techniques, basic painting techniques, I discovered the Army Painter. And, up to this, the paint I'd been using was, what I found at Hobby Lobby, it was nothing good at all, right? And I was really impressed with the amount of training and the openness, the company and what Adam was doing, the importance of how they were sharing techniques and education instead of, kind of guarding these.
Keeping the secret.
Yeah, exactly.
We break down gates. That's our thing. Gatekeeping doesn't grow anything.
Right. And it just really impressed me. And so I reached out to the company and I got put in touch with Adam, and we had a couple of great conversations, and I was really, really vibing with the things he was saying. And of course, storytelling is huge to me. And, it makes the world go round, since we were sitting around in caves, hiding from saber-toothed tigers, we told stories around fires. And so, that's really important to me. And so when Adam and I talked and I heard this message, I really wanted him to come and share his insights with you guys.
Yes.
This actually comes a bit off the back of a neighbor friend of mine. It's weird to think that I have friends who have kids graduating from college now. But his son, he invited me to a graduation party, and he had just graduated with a media arts degree from Louisiana State. I was like, well, I got to go talk to him, And, talking with his family, they're all nervous because he's got this video production media arts degree. Like, what is he going to do? And I'm like, guys, like, I do okay. And I explained to them exactly what I'm explaining to you guys now, is that now more than ever, there's a need for creatives in the world. There's a question here about how can students start building a real world experience while still in school. Now, I'm going to share something that your professors probably aren't going to like. But I have been on many job interviews, and I have never been asked where I went to college, not one time, what I studied in school, or what my GPA was. Now, I'm sure that they looked at it on my resume, but it never came up in conversation. Again, you got to be able to connect and make connections, not just smooze. That's a word. Schmooze. That's how you say it. I've been up since 4 a.m., so give me a break. You got to make connections with people. And I, as somebody who hires people now, I look at a resume, but really what I want to look at is their body of work. And not just what the work is, how technically proficient it is, because that's something that people are learning all the time. There's new data, new technology coming out all of the time that we have to adapt and learn. And that is a technically important part of what you're doing. You guys are all going to a technical college to learn how to build and make and create media, but you're always going to be learning that. Just like people in academia are always going to be learning. People in medicine, my wife is a dentist. She's constantly going to continued education. It costs a lot of damn money, but you constantly have to learn. So the way I challenge that question, it's not really a challenge, is that you should be building real world experience right now. Everybody in this room is over the age of 18. You are adults legally. You have access to a camera, even if it's this thing. You can even edit from this thing. You can do sound design on this thing too, which is insane to me. I learned how to splice 16 millimeter out of a Bolex camera before I could get into a digital editing suite, right? So, and it's not to say that anything is wrong with that. That's a great thing. But it also means that you have no effing excuses. If you have an idea, go make it. Find some friends. I watched the documentary about Charlie Sheen, and that guy is an absolute. One of the things I loved about him is that him and his friends just made movies, and his brother. They just did it because Daddy did it. So why wouldn't we do it? Go make movies. Go draw pictures. Take your art and go to, a local farmer's market and put it on display. You're going to get feedback, and I promise you that it's going to be more positive than it is negative, and that's going to inspire you. So make stuff, put it out into the world, and let that feedback inspire you to do more and motivate you to do more. Internships, are they still important? I've never had one. In full disclosure. I think internships are important in some fields, but it all depends on what you get out of them. You need to go into an internship with an expectation, and you should identify that up front, I think, with the person you're interning with. What do you want me to get out of this? Because here's what I want to get out of this. You need to know what you want out of it, because if you don't know what you're going to get out of it, you're not going to get anything out of it. Like AI. AI is only as good as what you put into it. If you put idiotic stuff into AI, you're probably going to get idiotic stuff back out of it. So know what you want to get out of something. And that might change while you're there, and that's the blessing of life, is that you're going to learn something new, and it's going to deviate. As I said, there's no roadmap for this. The only thing that I know is that crashing is really slow, right? So, and being slow, being at a stop is almost worse than crashing, because you're never going to get out there. Don't be afraid to fail. Get out there and learn from it. So David says, can you share a bit about how your projects run? Yeah, I mean, right now we are in a great deal of change. We went from being a company that had one major release and a couple follow-ups, throughout the year, to now moving to having a dozen plus releases and working on some huge IP. The IP that got me into this world, as David said, I read Lord of the Rings. I made Middle Earth out of Legos in my basement when I was a kid, and then I've discovered Warhammer, and then Warhammer ended up making some of the miniatures that were used for the practical effects in Lord of the Rings. And I decided I wanted to go to video school because I wanted to make a Warhammer movie. And now here I am selling paints by making movies that go on Warhammer figures. It's kind of weird. So the way things work now, I use something called Gantt charts. Um, I hate Excel spreadsheets, but I have to look at overlapping layers. And for me, full disclosure, I'm 41 years old. When I was 36, I was diagnosed with ADHD, and that put my whole life in perspective. So for me, I need to see structure, and I need to see how things fit and overlap. And when I started working with Gantt charts, it reminded me of a Final Cut Pro or an Adobe Premiere Pro timeline. It made sense because I was using editing suites. So Gantt charts are what we rely on, or what I rely on, being able to slide things back and forth and move them and see how they overlap, because that helps me to connect the pieces. What I do, I think, and the most important thing I do for the company is connect the pieces of the puzzle, and connect those storylines. And right now, this is actually quite exciting. I shared a bit of this with David, because we're changing at such a rapid pace. And my team right now I built a team to make one product launch. That's that rack that I showed you back there. And that team has actually gotten smaller in the past 2 years. And we're still putting out more content than we ever have. And the expectation is for that content to be more targeted and better next year. So how are we going to do that? Then you got to put your producer hat on, your problem solver hat. And the way we're going to do it is by telling serialized stories. Last week, I had initiated a new workflow with the team. I'm calling it the tactical ownership model. Each of them is going to be their own director of their own story. I'm going to be there as executive, studio guide, whatever, but I'm going to make sure that that story that they're telling connects to our brand pillars, has purpose through the release schedule. I'm going to help them align it with those things. It's going to free me up because I don't have to do all of the creative work. But, for me, that's going to be the most exciting thing. I think we'll have about 8 pieces of serialized content that will exist on multiple platforms. Stories that people can, if they find episode 1 2 years after it's been completed, they can, just like a Netflix show, they can do a deep dive and binge watch it. And I'm really, really excited about that, because content is currency. At least that's what I tell the board to protect my job. But I think that there's some truth in that. If you can keep people's eyes on something, you keep them attuned to something, from a branding or a business point of view, like imagine that billboard that catches your eye every day on the way to work. Now imagine that billboard is something that you wanted to keep watching, because you like the story, you like the character, you like the mission or the delivery, the color grading, whatever it might be. So we're going to try and pull that off. And it's probably going to spin off some cool products too. Aiden says, something you do when you feel discouraged, you feel like your work isn't going to make the cut. So I never feel like my work is never going to make the cut. I am personally, and anybody with ADHD can attest to this, I'm a kind of a dichotomy. I'm a living paradox. I am both insanely confident and also insanely insecure. And that for me is very powerful, because I am always my worst critic, but also nobody's going to critique me harder than I already have. So that makes me very confident. So when I start to get discouraged about something, it's usually not about the work that I'm doing. It's usually because I'm not getting what I need to complete that work. So that's where the problem solving comes in and the collaboration comes in. You have to ask for help. You need to ask people who've been there before. Or you need to try something different. Something that I recommend people do when painting miniatures, when doing anything, telling a story. If you get too close to it, Aiden, and it's not working, and you feel like it's not quite cutting it, take a break. Go for a walk, right? So part of what I was talking about, the tactical ownership model, their homework, the first homework I've ever given as a team, was that they needed to schedule a 30-minute tactical focus session every week. They had to block it out in their team's calendar, and they needed to add me as optional. I have no expectation of them calling me into that meeting, but if they have an idea or a problem, they can treat it as a one-on-one meeting with me if they want to. But really, I want them leaving their desk. I want them walking. I want them going somewhere. I want them being outside if at all possible, or going to a different location in the building. I want them sitting down with a sketchbook and drawing, writing notes. I want them reflecting. I want them getting outside of the work that they're doing, Aiden, so that they can think about it from a different way. And I was really worried when I pitched this to them last week, because it was very hoorah, emotional, hippy-dippy stuff, but they all really seemed to like it. And my new manager, she's there to help protect us right now, which is fun. She asked about it, and I told her about it. And I could just see this smile on her face. She worked at Lego. She was very high up at Lego, and she was very impressed with that concept, and she thinks it's going to be great. But I know, as a creative who's leading creatives, that sometimes you need a bit of space away from the pressures, right? To do your best work. When you're constantly working under pressure, it's not good. It's good if you can learn how to work under pressure, definitely in this line of work. It's good, but it can't constantly be that. So if you're putting pressure on yourself, you need to remove yourself from that situation, alleviate that pressure, be nice to yourself. Okay? Francis Ford Coppola's first film wasn't a masterpiece hit, right? There's a reason why most directors are much later in life that are successful. It's because it takes time. It's a craft. Okay? It's something, it's not just learning how to use the correct pneumatic pressure drill to put a tire on something. I'm not taking anything away from that. That's important work that somebody needs to learn. But if you learn it once, you know it for the rest of your life. The work that we do is constantly evolving because you are constantly evolving and your environment is constantly evolving. Tiffany, I'd like to think that I'm the ideal boss, but I promise you my organizational skills are not what an ideal bosses should be. But I lean on people for that. Well, you know your story most importantly, so you're the best person to tell it. And I think,
Right.
Tiffany, this is one thing that I did jot down in case nobody had questions for the Q&A. It's like the, what do you wish you knew starting out thing.
Right.
And I want to press upon this to all of you because I think, and this is something that I've recently realized that has given me a lot of clarity. You know that feeling that you get when you're like, why is everybody this stupid? Like, you know what I mean? Like you get frustrated in a situation. You're like, God, like, what are they not seeing? Right? How do I not get this across? Well, the reason is because no one really knows what they're doing. They really don't. I turned 41 this year, and I'm realizing all these people that I was trying to prove something to, that I thought that I needed to impress. I was hoping to learn something from them. I realize that they're still figuring it out too. And that's nothing wrong. It's not to take away from them, but we are constantly evolving. Just because you got a diploma doesn't mean you've figured it out for the rest of your life. Absolutely not. Don't be afraid to learn. Don't be afraid to fail. And if you do fail, learn from it.
Right
Play
about it.
sports, you know that, right?
Tell a story about it.
There you go. You could do it. I mean, a lot of people have done that.
Well, falling on your head sounds like failure, like me.
So I think that I think we talked about confidence and insecurity, right? And being afraid to tell your stories and share your work, right? Confidence to me is pretending that you have all of the answers. Or I should say,
Till you make it.
it is not pretending that you have all of the answers. Don't fake it till you make it. Never fake it till you make it. I hate when people say fake it till you make it. Confidence to me is being unafraid to ask more questions, being unafraid to fail, being unafraid to learn, being unafraid to put your hand up in a business meeting and say, you know what, that's my fault. Take ownership of your work. Especially if it's something that you created, because you need to stand behind it. If you can't stand behind it, going back to what Aiden was saying, if you can't stand behind what you're putting out there, who else is going to? And for me, I'm not the best videographer. I'm not the best editor, designer, writer, illustrator, or any of it. But I kept showing up, right? And I kept showing up with an open mind, a willingness to learn and fail. One of the most important things that I impress on my staff is that I want them to fail. Because if they're not failing, they're not trying hard enough. If they're not failing, they have nothing to grow or learn from. So I would say that any one rule is make the work that you do matter. Learn from it, okay? Do weird shit. Just do it really, really well and give a shit while you're doing it, okay? And I just want to say, David, I've got time for a little bit here, and I will happily pass on my email address. I'll just leave it in the chat if you have any questions. I would love to try and come up with some ways to get you doing some projects somehow. I don't know.
Ooh.
I don't know how it works.
Oh,
But maybe even send things over for you guys to feedback.
like an
I-
internship with the school, TSTC.
In
Media
Danish,
club?
in Denmark, I work for a Danish company. They don't believe in internships. They think it's slavery.
Paid internships.
There you go.
Some of us have to do internships to get our degree, though.
I understand.
So-
Okay. It's a part of it. Well, I've talked with David a bit about it, and we had some actually really fun ideas. It's just about seeing what the interest was with y'all. So if you have any ideas, one thing that I definitely would love is to find some motion graphic people right off the bat. Maybe some projects there. I don't know, but I'll talk with your team of leaders there, and if there's something that we can do, I would love to.
Yeah, we've got a few ideas that we're gonna bounce back with Adam and get talking. And the more interest we can see from you guys as far as excitement and passion about getting some, we would really love to make a connection and bridge something together. So hopefully we can get some things cooking here in the very near future. So we've been in the beginning stages of also starting a club for DMD and WDD, and that's the web design and development, Adam. And so that would be a great
There's
way.
a lot of web design crossover with the work that I do, just so you guys know.
Yeah, so that would be a great way where we could get some project work happening and some collaboration, some communication with you, Adam. Like, if you look at projects or you throw out some stuff to us, but we can always talk about that here. in the
Cool.
coming
And
days
if
together.
I'm an open book, so if you ever have any questions or want more advice, I'm happy. And I appreciate everybody, asking the questions. And this is my first time doing something quite like this, so I hope it was fun. I hope there was some takeaway, and I really appreciate your time. Just stop being afraid. Stop being afraid to collaborate. Stop being afraid to fail. You're going to be okay.
Well, thank you,
Thank
Adam,
you.
Michael.
for all of the wonderful information, the good insight from your professional perspective. Thank you for interacting with our students. We hope that this is going to be a long-term relationship, partnership with you down the road. And as you were noting, perhaps we can find some ways to get our students more connected with you and some projects and some things that will help them develop as they continue their career journey in our program. David, I'll let you close out on this.
Yeah, well, again, Adam, I can't thank you enough for some sagely advice here. It's fantastic. We really appreciate it. I appreciate you taking the time out to meet with us and our students, and the information that you gave us is priceless. And I hope that it really lit a fire under you guys and got you thinking about creativity, collaboration, and about not being afraid.